Centuries before Islam transformed Arabia, imagine this. One man stood before massive crowds at the great seasonal markets, delivering sweeping speeches about life, death, and the ultimate destiny of humanity. Picture a lone orator standing tall, right on top of a gray camel, his voice echoing across the vast, ancient desert, just absolutely mesmerizing everyone who listened. His words were so profound they'd be remembered and passed down for generations. Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're exploring the story of that legendary figure, Quss ibn Sa'idah.
To really understand the man, we first have to understand his world. And pre-Islamic Arabia, well, it was a land of sheer extremes. The geography was largely defined by harsh, sweeping desert dunes, which meant your survival completely depended on strict tribal alliances and nomadic pastoralism. But, it wasn't just empty sand, not at all. Arabia was crisscrossed by these vital long-distance trade routes. Bustling seasonal markets, like the famous market of Quss near Mecca, were the absolute center of life. They were places for trading luxury goods, sure, but more importantly, they were the ultimate hubs for the exchange of ideas, news, and culture.
Now, in Islamic tradition, this pre-Islamic era is referred to as the Jahiliyyah, which translates to the age of ignorance. The socio-political landscape was heavily dominated by polytheism, with the Kaaba in Mecca literally housing hundreds of idols. And society itself was rigidly structured around something called asabiyya, this intense, unwavering tribal solidarity. Since there was no central government, this fierce loyalty often escalated into brutal, endless cycles of blood feuds. It was a rugged, totally unforgiving social order, where your tribe was your one and only true protection.
But amid all the chaos of tribal warfare, there was actually this profound cultural sophistication. The Arabs of the Jahiliyyah placed an immense, almost sacred value on classical Arabic eloquence. Because this was a largely oral society, poets, genealogists, and orators essentially acted as the historical record keepers. Their words were their monuments. Think about it. A master orator could literally elevate their tribe's standing, forge massive alliances, or completely devastate rivals, using nothing but the sheer power of their rhymed prose and poetry.
So, zooming in from that macro view of desert society, we meet a man renowned across the entire peninsula, Quss ibn Sa'idah of the North Arabian Ayad tribe. In a culture that worshipped eloquent speech, Quss was widely considered an unparalleled master. He was a rock star of rhetoric, but he was known as more than just a speaker. He was a deeply respected sage and a judge who expertly navigated the incredibly complex webs of tribal law.
Now, piecing together his exact historical biography from early Arabic sources is honestly a fascinating challenge, but the texts do agree on a few core aspects of his identity. He was deeply respected among the warring tribes as a hakam, a judge who dispensed wisdom and justice. Intriguingly, though, classical sources frequently associate him with the Yemeni city of Najran, which was one of the oldest centers of Christianity in the Arab world. They often refer to him as a bishop or an ascetic monk who preached a message that was radically different from the polytheism all around him.
And this brilliantly illustrates his profound philosophical depth. We actually have fragments of his most famous surviving sermons. Listen to this. He who lives dies. He who dies is lost forever. Everything that could happen will happen. It was delivered in Saidah, which is this highly rhythmic, rhymed prose that absolutely captivated Arabian audiences. Instead of boasting about tribal victories or echoing the standard pride of the era, Quss was out there urging his listeners to look at the stars, the oceans, the cycle of life, and really reflect on their own mortality.
So, you might be wondering, how do we actually know what a man said in an oral society centuries and centuries ago? Well, Quss's reflections on the cosmos and human destiny left such a massive, indelible mark on his audiences that they were committed to memory, spread like wildfire, really. Generations later, early Islamic historians and philologists who were just completely fascinated by his eloquence finally wrote these mesmerizing words down, preserving the echoes of his voice in the classical Arabic literary canon forever.
In Islamic literature, there's this really cool genre called awa'il, which records the firsts in history. And Quss, he is credited with several incredible firsts. He was said to be the very first orator to lean on a staff or a sword while speaking, a practice you can still see in some sermons today. He allegedly coined the standard transitional phrase, amma ba'd, meaning, as for what follows, which is still used constantly in Arabic letters and speeches. He even established a foundational legal rule that the burden of proof rests firmly on the plaintiff.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark, undeniable contrast between the mainstream religious environment and Quss's specific message. While the powerful Quraysh tribe in Mecca worshipped a whole pantheon of idols like Hubal and Uzza,
Quss was preaching something totally radical for his time and place. The sources document him urging the crowds to abandon their idols, speaking passionately of a single supreme creator, and even preaching about the resurrection and moral accountability in the afterlife.
Because his message was so distinct, modern scholarship and classical texts still debate his exact religious affiliation today. Was he definitively a Christian bishop from Najran, heavily influenced by Syrian and Yemeni Christian traditions? Or was he a Hanif? The Hanifs were these traditional, pre-Islamic Arabian monotheists who sought out the original, uncorrupted religion of Abraham, entirely separate from institutional Christianity and Judaism. While scholars definitely differ on the exact label, the consensus is clear. He was a pivotal, undeniable monotheistic voice in a deeply polytheistic land.
All right, this brings us to what is easily the narrative climax of his legacy. According to early Islamic historical sources, in the late 6th century, a young man from Mecca was standing right there in the crowd at the market of Ukaz. That young man was Muhammad, before his prophethood. The tradition states that Muhammad listened, totally spellbound, as Quss preached from atop his great camel. Years later, after the advent of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad fondly recalled this very sermon, forever cementing Quss's historical importance.
In fact, when a delegation from the Iyad tribe later visited the Prophet in Medina, he actually asked them about Quss. Upon learning that he had passed away, the Prophet is recorded by early historians as saying, "May Allah have mercy on Quss. On Judgment Day, he shall be raised up alone like a nation." This immense profound respect secured Quss a place of lasting honor among later Muslims. They saw him as a righteous, pre-Islamic monotheist who recognized the truth well before the dawn of the new era.
Normally, the Islamic era sharply rejected the culture of the pagan Jahiliyyah. They wanted a clean break. Yet Quss was universally celebrated. He became the ultimate benchmark for linguistic perfection. In classical Arabic literature, if you wanted to praise someone's speaking abilities, you didn't compare them to a king or a conqueror. You used the proverb, ablug min Quss, meaning more eloquent than Quss. His words completely transcended religious boundaries to become a core pillar of Arabic literary heritage.
So the crucial point here is that as we look back, we really must separate the historical man from the myth. Like a lot of legendary figures, generations kept adding layers of embellishment to his biography. The historical core is solid, right? He was a great orator, a judge, and a monotheist of the Iyad tribe. But later literary traditions started claiming he lived for 600 or 700 years, that he casually hung out with the apostles of Jesus, or even that he specifically foretold later Islamic political structures. These are fascinating myths for sure, but they mostly reflect just how incredibly important he became to different groups over the centuries.
But look, this also serves as a really important reminder of the epistemic challenges of relying on oral history. Modern scholars carefully caution that while Quss was undoubtedly a real, highly influential historical figure, many of the specific word-for-word quotes attributed to him might actually be apocryphal. They could be later inventions or just generalized Arabian wisdom that was projected backward onto his legendary persona just to give those words absolute, unquestionable authority.
Yet, whether every single word recorded was exactly his or not, his impact is completely undeniable. Whether remembered as a philosopher, a poet, a judge, or Arabia's greatest orator, Quss ibn Sa'idah reminds us that the search for wisdom truly transcends civilizations. One man's voice, ringing out over a bustling, dusty desert market centuries ago, may have faded into history, but the profound echo of his words continues to shape literature, faith, and the pursuit of truth today. So it makes you wonder, what legacy will your words leave?